Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear us? This is Amy from MUJI Canada. Happy to see everyone here again. Thank you for joining us. We are just gonna turn on Alyssa's camera and then make sure she can hear us as well. Okay, start. Hi, Alyssa. You can turn on your camera now. Gonna put you back to voice. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well, Amy. How are you?
Good, good. So welcome back to the MUJI workshop. So today we are gonna learn some brush lettering from you. We do have 60-minute session today, but just in case we might go a little bit over time. So if everyone here, you are okay to stay a little bit longer to get your questions and then talk to Alissa, feel free to stay longer with us. Otherwise, feel free to send your questions to Alissa through Instagram or her email. I'll share her Instagram account and also email address with you so you know where to reach out after the workshop. And something new we do this year is that getting a lot of people's feedback, telling us that it's difficult to access to Facebook. Not everyone has a social media account. That's okay. So then from this year, we are going to upload a replay video on YouTube. So I'll be sending out the link where to find out this video of today's entire workshop. So you know where to rewatch it and then, practice with Alissa here. Okay, so we are at 10. I will pass it to Alissa, and you might want to turn on your camera for the overhead one.
Sure, let me do that first. Just have to turn that on.
Oh, yes.
Let me just
okay, I'm gonna spot.
Sorry, one sec. I just need to. Okay. Oh no. Sorry, everyone. I'm having technical difficulties. Oh boy, it's upside down. Sorry, one moment, everyone.
No problem. Okay, maybe I'll just go through a little bit about today's outline. For the first 15 minutes, Alissa will tell us how to the basic part, like how to hold the pens and how to do upstrokes and downstrokes. And we will take a few questions over there after the first session. And then after that, we will move into the demonstration to learn how to write all the month names. So then it will take about 13 minutes. And if you have any questions that's really critical at that particular steps, we will take them and then give it to Alissa to answer. Oh, good. Okay.
All right. So sorry about that, everyone. Sometimes Zoom just does funny things for me. So hi, I'm Alyssa Hoynatsky. I'm a lettering artist, an instructor, and author from Vancouver, BC. This is my book. And it is on Amazon, and it's in Barnes & Noble and Chapters Indigo. And if you want to continue in your lettering journey after today, it would be a great resource for you. And of course, please come follow me on Instagram. Send me an email if you have any questions after today. I would love to get to know you more and follow you in your journey as well as you learn lettering. Teaching these workshops is truly the highlight of my biz. And when there's not a pandemic, you will find me teaching people in person, which is one of my favorite things. And I'm just thankful to MUJI for giving us the next best thing, because it's always better to letter together. Now, my lettering workshops are always 3 to 4 hour intensives. So obviously we can't do all of that today. So what we're going to do is focus our lettering learning on writing the months of the year, just giving it that kind of lens to look through lettering. So I'll give you a brief intro to using your brush pen well, and then we'll move into writing the months of the year. And my hope is we'll get through all of them. There is a chance we might not, so I just appreciate your patience. We'll start slower, and if there's a moment where it starts to get a little bit fast for you at the end, feel free to treat it more like a demo, and then refer back to your workbook later. So in your workbook, I've given you the full exemplar for the lowercase printed alphabet. So you can refer to that throughout the workshop today and after the workshop as you continue lettering. And I've also given you a photograph on the last page of all the months that we'll be doing today, all the months of the year. So if we happen to not get to the end, feel free to refer to that. You can even go on your computer and zoom into the PDF if you want to get really up close and personal with those examples. There'll be a great resource for you for, let's say, oh, how did she write February? You can go on to that and look closely at it to help you and guide you. Today I'm using MUJI Supplies for almost everything. And I'm not just saying this because I'm partnering with MUJI. I really love their minimal approach to their stationery, and particularly for calendars. I love embellishment as a lettering artist. I love to personalize everything. Here's a page from my book, super embellished. But in my calendar, I prefer a little bit more simplicity. Because it's all about me being efficient and making sure I don't miss any details. So what I love about this calendar, and actually maybe Amy, I'll turn on my desk view here and switch to my desk view. I'm just going to check with her. Amy, are we switched to it? Okay, great. So there we go. Awesome. So what I love about this is that there isn't a lot on here. It's very simple. I've gone ahead and added all the numbers of the days, but even that isn't here when you get this notebook. Now, if you do prefer a more embellished look in your notebooks, then take what I'm teaching you today and embellish it and add to it as much as you like. If you're a bullet journaler, you can take these lettering styles and work them into your spreads. Or if you've bought a pre-made calendar, which is the common calendar that probably most of us have, look for the white space on the page. So for example, here, because February has less days, and actually in this Monday start calendar, I love that it's a perfect rectangle in 2021. I actually have a lot of extra room. So I looked for that empty space, and that's where I did a little extra lettering on this spread. So for us today, I'm actually going to suggest, if you're using this calendar like I am from MUJI, to use this space to write the month, because it gives us a nice chunk of room to write some of these longer month names. So I'm using MUJI's brush pens. It's a 12 color set. I like that it has like 2 greens, 2 blues, 2 pinks. So there's lots of nice variety of tones that I can use. And if you're wondering what I mean by a brush pen, what I'm talking about is a pen that has a flexible tip. And this tip is very resilient, and it's meant to bend. So I'm going to show you here. And I'm going to try and bring it closer. This tip is bending quite a bit, and it's meant to do that. And you can see that it bounces back. So brush pens have that ability because it allows us to get a very thin mark, like so. And the same brush tip can give us a very thick mark. And all that has to do with is how much pressure I'm applying. Now, it's important that we use brush pens correctly. We don't treat them like a regular pen. So when I'm writing with this gel pen, I'm actually writing almost vertically with my pen. But when I'm writing with a brush pen, I'm not writing vertically. This will fray the tip of the brush pen. Instead, I'm going to write with it at a 45-degree angle. And one way that I like to teach people to learn this is actually to open your writing hand up and rest the pen in this part of your hand. Now, I don't have a good name for this part of the hand. I call it the webbing between your thumb and your pointer finger. It's kind of not a very nice name. But if you rest it there and then find your comfortable grip, you should be able to hold the pen at a roughly 45-degree angle. Now, this is not, mathematically exactly 45 degrees, but just imagine 45 degrees. So let me show you again. I would hold a regular pen straight up and down. And if I did that with a brush pen, I would fray the tip. So because this is a specialized pen, I hold it at a 45, resting it against this little soft spot between my thumb and my pointer finger. And this allows me to write with the side of the nib. When I'm pressing down, notice how much of the brush tip is touching the page to make that thick mark. And you'll notice that the tip is bending and then it's bouncing back. To get that thin mark, I'm using just the very tip. I'm still holding the pen at an angle, although I have to admit, I do kind of raise it up a touch to do this, but it's definitely not straight up and down. It's still at an angle. And the tip is just tickling the page to get that very, very thin mark. And I also want you to notice that these thin marks I have been doing in an upward motion. And the thick marks I have been doing in a downward motion. So in lettering, we call our thin upstrokes, the thin marks, we call them upstrokes. Whenever our pen is moving upwards, or if we happen to move horizontally, we do it thin. And this is a rule that is rarely broken in brush lettering. And anytime we want these big, robust strokes, we're moving down. So if you're using your pen correctly, you will prolong the life of that brush tip and you'll get nice crisp lines. Now, all brush pens over time will break down just with lots of use. And you can also prolong the tip by using smooth paper. So the smoother, the better. My practice paper is just laser jet paper. It's really, really smooth from an office supply store. And MUJI actually has a lot of notebooks with very, very smooth paper, like remarkably smooth. So I really like their notebooks for lettering as well. So upstrokes are thin, downstrokes are thick, and you're going to hear me say this over and over today. Another thing to remember is to go slow. So going slow is going to be your friend, even as when you become a accomplished letterer with lots of practice under your belt, you're still going to go slow. It's a slow craft. So if you're not getting results today that you really like, I would suggest you slow down. So let's look at the year 2021 for practice. We'll start with the number 1 because it's all straight lines. So when I'm making the number 1, I'm going to make that thick downstroke straight down. And if you want to just watch me, you can, or if you want to do this along with me, you can, whichever feels right to you. Now, I'm going to make a number 1 that has this little, I don't even know what it's called, entrance stroke here. So it's diagonal upwards, and I'm going to treat it like an upstroke. So I'm just going to tickle the page and make a very light, thin stroke. And same with the bottom, the base, I'm going to treat it like an upstroke and keep it thin. So anytime your pen is moving horizontally, you're going to keep it thin. Now, you can always touch things up. I have to touch up that little spot. All letterers touch their work up. And it's not ever like a continuous moving line. We're often lifting our pen, pausing, and then continuing. So now with the 2, we have something called an overturn. An overturn is where we're moving in an upwards direction. And at the top, we switch to heavy pressure and come down with heavy pressure. Now, these curvy marks are difficult. So you're not going to master it in the next 5 minutes if you've never done it before. So please take that pressure off of yourself. But when we do our 2, we're going to do one of those small overturns at the top coming up. And now I'm going to start to transition to thick pressure. I'm coming down on a slight diagonal. It's almost straight here. And now I'm doing the same thing I did at the bottom of the 1. I'm going to do a horizontal line that I treat like an upstroke in the sense that it's thin. And now for the ultimate test in lettering, the oval. And friends, truly, if you have not lettered before today, you're going to need to practice ovals. So you probably won't master it today. Ovals are something we practice over and over again as lettering artists. So please don't feel pressure to be excellent at this right from the start. But when we make an oval, we're going to make a very similar shape to here, only we're going to go to the left. We're going to start at the top and we're going to be going down. So we put heavy pressure. And as we get to the bottom, right about here, I'm going to release the pressure. Now I rested my pen here for a minute. I got a lot of ink. So let me do that again. I'm starting thin. And as I come around the corner and go down, I'm pressing thick. And now I'm starting to think about releasing pressure. And now I come around and I finish up my oval. This is hard. like I've just said a few times. So I really always say this to my students. It's going to come with practice. It's going to come with doing a few pages of ovals. And in 2021, I've got my 2, I've got my oval, which is my 0. I've got another 2, and I've got my 1. It's going to come with practice. So today, if this is hard for you, which it probably is if you're a first-time letterer, I would suggest practicing on practice paper before you start writing in your calendar, just so that you're not blazing ahead and making a major mistake in your journal. That being said, hand lettering is always perfectly imperfect. That's the charm of it. It's made by hand. There's very few lettering artists, even master calligraphers, that can make lettering that looks like it was made perfectly, like by a machine. So please remember that as we're lettering today, and remember to embrace the imperfectness of it as we letter. So I thought we'd start with February because February is right on the horizon. I've put a sticker here in this one, and I'll show you what that's for a little bit later. Just a place for me to put the notes. You can see that I've already gone ahead and numbered my days in mine, just so that I would know what space I have. And if you have the same calendar, I think that's a good place to start, because then you can visualize where the white space will be. I've also written lightly in pencil February, so that I can make sure I'm spelling it correctly. Is that showing up? I don't know if you can see that. It's very light. And then I've also noted where the middle of the word is. So between the R and the U, that's the middle. That's going to help me kind of just visualize where the letters are going. Now, if you're using this same calendar as I am, you can actually use the way it's created to help you lay it out. So what I've done, I'm just using a mechanical pencil. I've just extended the lines from the calendar, which just kind of gives me like a visual ruler to help me visualize the spacing. I'm not going for any kind of mathematical precision today, but I am just sort of keeping an eye on that spacing. And I'm going to use this ruler, which also, I'm not actually trying to sound like a MUJI ad, but isn't this the cutest ruler? It's so adorable. I love it for doing work in my agenda. So I'm just going to line it up. And so what I'm doing is I'm making a line that is slightly above the middle of the center of this space that I'm using. Now, again, if you're not using the same calendar as I am, feel free to find a space on your calendar page that can fit some lettering. And you might have to sort of rejig what I'm doing to make it fit on your calendar. And again, feel free to do this on just a white piece of paper to practice. So to make February, we'll do similar to what I've got in the example I just showed you. I have written the whole thing in the pink pen. There's 2 pinks in the MUJI set. I'm using the cool pink tone. And I want you to notice that what I've done is I've done a large capital letter, and then I've actually lifted my lower letters a little bit higher so that I have room for this descender on the Y. The Y goes down below the baseline when we're writing. And so if I were to write February just right here, then the Y would go down into this box for my calendar. So I'm going to make a large F, and then I'm going to lift up February onto this line that I've drawn, this middle line that's slightly higher than the middle of the boxes. So I'm going to make my F, and I'm going to make a nice thick downstroke. Please feel free to do this on a piece of paper if you're not ready to do this in your calendar like I am. So I've got my nice thick downstroke, and now I'm going to use the very tip, only the teeniest tiny tickle of the tip, going right straight across. And the second one I'm going to do on that middle line that I made with my ruler. And if I need to touch it up, I will. Now I'm going to center my next letters on that ruler line that I made. So this E, this lowercase e, I'll show you here. If this is the ruler line that I've made, I'm going to start my lowercase e on the line. I'm going to do an upstroke that comes around. And now I'm moving into like the top of the oval. I put heavy pressure and I come around. So I'm starting here on the line. I'm going up slowly, and now I'm transitioning into that overturn from the oval, doing a thick downstroke and coming back. Now, if there's a place where here I was a little bit clunky in my transition, I can just touch it up. And that's, again, a normal part of the lettering artist's practice, is touching up our letters when we make a little mistake, because making mistakes is part of what we do. So now I'm going to do it here. I'm going to do my upstroke with a downstroke and another upstroke. Now, this is a hard letter to learn second because it's one continuous motion. So again, if you're finding this lowercase e a little bit difficult, try practicing it a bunch of times in a row. Now we're going to do our lowercase b. For our lowercase b, we're going to center our letter on this line that we drew with the ruler right here. So I'm going to make my downstroke. This is taller than the E, so it's going to match sort of the height of the F. And now after I've made my thick downstroke, I'm going to start right kind of around that line that I made with the ruler, coming up, transitioning to that thick downstroke and going around. And again, if I need to, I can just touch up my oval a little bit. So the parts that are an upstroke are very thin. The parts that are thick, obviously, are quite thick. And there's a high contrast between the thick and the thin. And that's, again, that's difficult to do. And it comes with practicing having control of that pressure with the pen. So again, I'm going to do it in my book and I'll show you again. I'm starting about the height of the F here. I'm going to make my thick downstroke. And now I'm going to go around and complete my B. Now the R is going to be slightly easier. We're going to make a thick downstroke, and then we're just going to do a slight little mark. Now I am technically going down a little bit here, but I'm choosing to keep it all light and thin. So we do downstroke like that. For the U, we're doing our downstroke with pressure. Just like at the beginning when I showed you the oval, now I'm going to start to release pressure and go up. This is light pressure, just tickling the page, and a downstroke. So we go down thick, start to consider releasing the pressure. We go up, and we make a downstroke for the side. For a letter A, we're going to make an oval like we practiced when we did 2021. And now I'm going to use my pen to make a downstroke that just kisses the edge of the oval. So I'm going to make that here. Doing my A. My oval needs a slight touch up, and there we go. And now I'm going to do another R. I won't show you on the paper. I'll just do it here. Another R. And now the Y is very similar to the U. We're going to make that U shape. And now we're going to have the descender, the part in February that comes all the way down. And remember, this is why we lifted the letters up higher. So this is let me do that again for you. I've done my U shape that has an underturn to it. It was thick and then lifting pressure and transitioning to thin as I go up. And now I'm going to do heavy pressure down until I get here, and I'm just slowly releasing pressure here. It's like when I learned how to drive standard, and I couldn't just suddenly release the clutch. I had to slowly release the clutch. It's the same thing here. I'm slowly releasing pressure as I get to the edge of that Y. So let me put it here. And now I'm going to quickly show you some ways to give it the shading. So the first thing to know about this shading is that it's actually just a couple layers of pen on top of each other. These are very buildable in color. So I can now, at the top of February, just add a couple extra layers. Something to be mindful of here is to keep it about the same height all the way across. So because these letters only come to about here, I want to bring my pink layer that's a bit darker to about, I'm actually going pretty close to that line I made with the ruler. And here I'm just building up the color, adding a bit extra to make it a bit darker at the top. You could also do this with the other side of your brush marker if you feel like that gives you a little bit more control because it's not pressure sensitive. This side is not pressure sensitive. But I like to use the brush tip, so whichever one feels more comfortable to you. And then just be mindful of your paper. If your paper is going to have the ink go through, then you wouldn't want to build as much onto it. And then I've just used red at the bottom. And again, I'm just going to go to the same, kind of the same height all the way across. So a little bit higher. And here. And this is making a graduated effect. I'm going a little bit faster here than I would normally just because I'm conscious of the time. And then the final trick is to add a little bit of shading or shadow. And again, we don't have a ton of time, which is why I've put it in the exemplar for you. Here, what I'm doing is I'm just putting a line to the right of the letter and above the letter. So I'm never putting a line on the left-hand side of the letter or underneath the letter. Any letter part where I can go above it or to the right. I'm just putting a little floating line with a gel pen. And that gives us this effect. I won't do the whole thing, but it gives us this effect that you can see here. There's a floating line to the right and above. Now, I did say I'd explain why I put this sticker in. It's because I actually did I went pretty intense here with my layering of colors, and it went through. And so I decided to just put this sticker here. I often keep on my desk kind of a bowl of like little things I've picked up from here and there, washi tapes and stickers. And just to cover that up, and because I have room, I'm just going to put maybe for this spread, which is getting a little bit more into the Bujo territory, you know, a little pretty sticker. And maybe I'd write here notes with just my regular handwriting. And then I have a place to write my notes. And again, for me, that's getting almost a little bit too embellished because I like it to be more simple. But I do want to give you ideas on what to do with this white space. Another thing that I could do, because there's quite a bit of extra space in the February layout, is I could put another one of these stickers that I just got from an office supply store and write a quote here if I wanted, or I could write, you know, I could make a doodle, or I could keep a habit tracker here if I wanted to track my sleep, for example. So those are just some ideas that you can use for filling out the empty space. Okay, so let's move on to March. For March, I went into the purples. I'm just gonna get a new piece of paper, flip it over. Oh, I can't flip it over. I will let my kids use these pages later. We'll reuse them around the house for their other work. Okay, so here I'm gonna use the purple for March, and we're gonna make our large M. So we're gonna go straight up. And now we're gonna make a thick downstroke that goes on the diagonal. Now we're going to do a thin upstroke that just tickles the page, and a thick downstroke. Okay, and then for the A, we've already done. The R, we've already done. So let's look at the C. The C is basically most of an oval. So we go up and over, and we just don't close the oval. So remember, thin. And as we get to the top, we begin to think, oh, I have to transition to thick, and we begin to slowly add the pressure And as we get to about this point, we think, oh, I'm going to have to release pressure, and we start to release the pressure. And then we can put a downstroke that's just kind of kissing. Oh, I just made an A because I was thinking of the word March. We're making a C. Forget that. And then my H is a thick downstroke. And now we have an overturn. Do you see how these letters are made of similar shapes? And we just do our overturn. So in my book, I've looked at the word March. I wrote it very lightly here for myself. And again, like I said, because I have these lines here, I just lightly, I can erase them later, kind of just extend them. It helps me think about the spacing that I have. It's like a kind of a built-in ruler, like I said. And now I'm going to use my little cutie ruler here to make a pencil mark. That's my reminder to make the lowercase letters a little bit higher. Then I'm making the uppercase letter very large. And then I'm making my lowercase letters a little bit, I'm raising them up and a little bit smaller. So here we go. I'm going to make my downstroke. Oh, I just did it backwards. I just did it the backwards way of what I just told you. So this happens when you're a letterer. So the way I'm going to adjust, because this happens, so I kind of love that this is happening. I'm going to actually work backwards on my M. I'm going to treat this as my downstroke here. So it's just a little bit backwards. I actually kind of love when I make a mistake on these workshops because I think it's so real life. It's the real life that happens to us when we're doing lettering. So there you go. I've saved my M. It's not perfect, guys, but like I said, we embrace the imperfect when we're doing lettering, especially when we're beginners, and especially when it's in our agenda and we can't erase it. So you know what? We embrace the imperfection. So here I'm making my A. Remember, it was an oval with a downstroke. My R is a downstroke with a slight little upstroke that has a slight curve. My C, like that. And now my not uppercase, my H, lowercase h with an ascender that goes up as high as the M and maybe even a little bit higher. So there you go, I've got March. Now, the way that I made this one kind of look special was by, again, I'm looking at where the letters fall and I'm building up color on the top of the letter, kind of around the place where I've got that line. And then I'm going to use pink. Oops, I forgot to do it here with my brush pen. I'm going to use pink on the bottom. So you'll note that I'm doing this building up of color on the downstrokes and the upstrokes. So you have to just be very careful on those upstrokes just to keep it pretty thin. So here I'm going to use the same bluish pink that we use, the cool pink. It's not bluish, but it's cool pink. And I'm going to use it just on the bottom. I'm going to bring it up higher so that it gets onto these letters a little bit too. It's just the slightest little amount on those ones. And then I'm just checking, does it go to about the same place? And being very careful on those very thin upstrokes. And so I'm getting that effect. And then if I had more time, I would sit here and I would do my outline over every letter, but I'll show you just one or two. Now you might notice that in my March here, I've actually made my outline more like a little scribble. I've just made it a bit thicker. So you can definitely do that as well. It just takes a bit more time. And sometimes I do this in gray because it's softer. You can also, of course, use any color of gel pen or even any fine liner to do this. So that just adds kind of like an extra layer of oomph to it. It helps it pop off the page. All right, let's look at April. I know we're moving a little bit fast. I want to try and get through as much as we can. And let me just check my time here. We're a little bit behind, so I'm just going to keep forging ahead. And if it's getting too fast, I recommend that you treat it like a demo and then watch the replay and look at your worksheet to help you as you're learning again later, as you're continuing in your learning journey. Okay, so for April, we're going to do an upstroke for that A. It's diagonal, and now we're going to do a nice, thick, juicy downstroke and cross. The P is new. It's a downstroke that goes below the baseline of the letters. And of course, we're going to lift it up when we make that line in my calendar. We've seen the R already. The I is a downstroke with a little dot. And then we've got a nice easy, actually April, quite easy, isn't it? Okay, I shouldn't call it easy. It's easier than some of the other letters we've done so far. Okay, so I'm going to use my ruler again. I'm going to make a line. That reminds me, it keeps me focused on where I need to place my letters. So I'm going to make my A, thick downstroke. Now, if you want to actually lift the midline up to this higher line, you're welcome to do that. It gives a slightly different look. I'm not going to do it today, but you can definitely do that. So here we go with my R, that little tiny upturn, my I, and the L. And now the way that I did this one with the coloring was I used the dark green at the bottom. And again, I'm just kind of checking how low can I go here on these letters. Actually, it might help to do your highest letters first when you're doing this. Just turn off my... And filling in with that dark green. You could stop there if you wanted, but if you want to give it even a little bit more depth, you can add a little bit of yellow. That's what I did here. Just a little bit of yellow to make it even more kind of like an appley green feeling. And then of course you would add your shadow. Okay, May. For May, I went with blues and greens. We've already done all of these letters. So I'm going to go straight into my book. I started with, well, I always start with pencil and make my line. That's important. You'll notice that I haven't always been adding these lines, and that's because with some of these words, April, March, May, they're pretty short. I'm not worried about running out of space. If I was doing, September, I probably would lay out those lines a bit more. So May, I'm going to make my M quite large. There's this thin upstroke, right? Just tickling the page. And now I'm going to go down on a diagonal with a robust downstroke, lots of pressure. If you're still practicing with me, I want to remind you to go slow and to make sure your pen is at a 45-degree angle. Okay, and then going up. I've made quite a wide M here. And that's interesting to note because our letters are not all exactly the same width. The M is way wider than a lowercase a, for an example. And that's normal. That's a normal part of lettering. So now I've forgotten to put my A on the line. So I'll show you what will happen now. This doesn't actually bother me too much in my own calendar, but because I've forgotten and I've defaulted to my normal putting the letter on the baseline, now my Y is going to go down into May 10th. Sorry, May 10th. So it's actually not, it's not dire. But the reason I make the line is usually so that I trigger my brain to remember to lift it up. So what I did here was I used, I think I actually used yellow on top of the blue. I'm just going to touch up this little spot here. Down here, which obviously that blue and yellow is going to make a nice greeny color. And you could use green as well, but something about the yellow just popped a bit more for me when I was playing with it. And then I've used the dark green just in the middle. So this is slightly different. Before, the other ones were more of an ombre from dark to light, or with a light spot in the middle. And here we're just doing a darker spot in the middle. It's just a different look. And so another reason that I included all of these in your exemplar, so you can look at the color combos and you can decide, oh, I like that color combo, I want to try it. Or you can say, you know what, I don't like the color she chose, and I'm going to do a substitution. Right, and then after that, I would make my shadow line, which is always, in this case, I'm doing to the right and above. So to the right, not on the left-hand side, to the right, and never below. I'm only going above and to the right. Okay, let's try June. So for June, I went into some warmer tones. So I started with orange as my base color. And hopefully you're seeing how these letters really the colors are buildable. So I've got my J, which is a robust downstroke that transitions into a slight upstroke as you come around the corner. We've done a U. I don't think we've done an N yet. So we do a thick downstroke. And this is very similar to the H. We're just doing that overturn right there. And we've done an E. So let's give it a try. I'm going to take my ruler. Got to remember this time to lift up those letters up to the line. Hopefully I don't forget again. Okay, so I'm going to make my J, thick, robust downstroke. And now already at this point, I'm thinking I have to transition to my upstroke right here. And I do a little touch up. And now I'm going to remember this time to put it in the right spot. I'm going to make my U, which is just that underturn that we've practiced with a downstroke beside. The N is very similar. It's just flipped over, or it's like the H as well, that thick downstroke, and then upstroke, transitioning to downstroke. And now my letter E, which I'm starting right around the line that I made with my ruler. I'm going around and finishing it off in one fell swoop. So for this one, I used red at the bottom, but then I used a colored gel pen. So let me just quickly make my color here at the bottom. Has to come all the way up to these lower letters, right? And you can tell I do this a little bit differently every time. I'm always making, it's like as the mood hits me, to be honest. I would not call hand lettering an art where we're going for perfection all the time. Now, there are lettering artists who are able to make letters that are pretty perfect. But when we're learning, we're removing that pressure from ourselves and embracing the imperfection of it. So here I have a red MUJI gel pen, and I'm just going to use it here and overlap a little bit. And I'm not coloring solid. I'm leaving a bit of space in these lines, so it just kind of softens the transition line. So totally okay to use different types of pens to layer to make a different effect. And you could really go to town on it more. I'm going to stop here just for the interest of time today. On this one, I can tell that I actually did add a little bit more, but we're limited in time. So I'm going to leave this one without the shadow effect, because I've shown it to you a few times. But there's my June. Okay, let's look at July. Sorry, friends, I'm a little bit behind. But what we're going to do is we're going to power through as many of these as we can. And hopefully I'm giving you enough to work with after today. Okay, we've got, for July, I started with yellow. And we've done all of these letters, so I'm going to do it here in my notebook. I'm starting with yellow. I'm making that thick, robust downstroke. I'm making my underturn for my U. And it's totally okay that I'm going back in to do a little touch up. Here's my L. And here's my Y, which is very similar to the U. And this time I've remembered to lift those letters up so I'm not going into my calendar. And here, as I'm sure you can imagine, I'm using green again, as you can see, doing a little bit of dark green over top. Just to the bottoms here. And something that's lovely about printing brush lettering is that really once you understand the concept of the thick downstrokes and the thin upstrokes, then you can use whatever style of printing you like. So for example, my J here, I didn't put, you know, a stroke across the top, you know, like a little hat that the J wears sometimes. But if you prefer to have a fancy top on your J, you absolutely can. So here I've used, it's kind of a teal gel pen from MUJI, just to make that transition between the yellow and green just a little bit softer. Okay, for August, I wanted to go with something that felt a bit warmer. So we're doing the pink with a little bit of yellow over top, which gives a nice orange effect. So we've done A before. Just make my line. You don't actually have to make a line if you're going to remember, but you've seen me a couple times forget already. That's why I make the line, to remind myself. Okay, so I'm going to make, because August is a bit longer, I'm going to start further to the left. Up with my upstroke. And now down. And this horizontal line we treat like an upstroke and we keep it thin. And now the U we've seen a bunch of times. Now the G is new. So the G is an oval, like when we do the letter A. And then it has the same descending stroke that we saw with the Y. So the top is very similar to an A, and the bottom is very similar to a Y. So we make the oval, and then we bring it down. We've got another U. Now the S is important for me to show you because for the longest time I really struggled with the S. And then I found a trick, and it's that this part of the S is almost straight. So you go up and around, and then this part here, sorry, let me just touch it up. This part here, when you're going down, notice that it's like a straight diagonal. Okay, so we're not going for a really curvy S like this. That's really hard to control. So don't do that. Your S goes up, and then it's almost a straight diagonal and then around. So let's do it in here. You come around, and if you get a little spot like I did where I didn't transition quite as elegantly as I could, I can just sort of touch it up. And then my T, a little bit taller, and that thin cross stroke, we treat it like an upstroke. So for this one, I only had the two colors, and I believe I used yellow. Oh, maybe I used orange. Let's see. Was it orange? Oh, it's almost the same. That's why I can't tell. We'll use orange. And I'm just making that gradient to make it feel a bit warmer and a little bit more special. Now, something I haven't shown you is what I did with the numbers. So I went through with a black gel pen on these numbers, and then something I like to do is just take a coordinating color and just make a little circle around my numbers. I feel like it's not too busy for me, but it still ties in the color. And I'm still holding my pen at a 45 when I'm doing this because I don't want to fray the tip. All right, September. For September, I did a different color combo. I was just trying to give you a whole bunch. We've just learned how to make that S, so we're just going to make it larger this time. Make my line. And now I'm going to make, again, September. You know what? For this one, I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to draw these lines up and use it just to help me visualize how much space I have. That just helps me kind of keep it in mind. Now you could go through with pencil first and draw it out, but I like to, I don't feel like I need to at this point. You could definitely do that if you're feeling like a little bit unsure about your spacing. As you see, I did make a mistake when I didn't do that. So take from that what you will. Okay, so here's my S. Notice again that downstroke is almost straight and diagonal. It's a very vertical letter. It's not a wide curvy letter. We've got our E. Have we done a P? I can't remember. We have a nice thick downstroke that goes down below the other letters. And then we put the pen right where the line is and we make our oval. So I rest my pen actually inside the downstroke here, and then I make my oval like that. So here we go. We have a T. So that lowercase m is that nice thick downstroke. I rest the pen actually in the downstroke right here, if you can see where I'm kind of holding it. And now I'm doing a very light upstroke, and it's just another overturn like we've practiced. We saw this in the H, we saw it in the N. And so we're just resting it and doing up, slightly up, very thin, and then transitioning to that downstroke. Now our B, I believe we've done already. I'm losing track in my mind. Here we go. The E we've done, and the R. And for this one, I used purple at the bottom. I really do love how these layer so nicely on top of each other. Now, not every color is going to look good together, and you have to kind of play with the different colors. And again, you can refer to the photograph in your workbook to see kind of the ones that I came up with. And that might give you further ideas. That's certainly not exhaustive of all the color combos you could do. And then I used this, it's kind of like a mid-warm violet color of the gel pen. And I just used it right here. And again, I'm not doing this super solid. I'm kind of leaving it loose in the way that I'm coloring because I want it to blend between the dark purple and the pink. Now, something I did in this example of September that I haven't talked about yet is just another option you have for making your letters feel finished. And that is actually taking a black, and you could use the gel pen for this, or in this case, I'm going to use the fine liner tip and just in the downstrokes, make a line that is perfectly in the center. This just kind of gives some oomph to the downstrokes. You don't want to do it on the upstrokes because it will entirely cover them. And it doesn't have to be black either. You could use any other dark color. Sometimes that hit of black kind of helps make it feel grounded in those downstrokes. You could also take like a really opaque white gel pen or paint marker and do white as well. That would also look quite nice. All right, how are we doing for time? We are close. Well, I'm going to get us through October for sure. And then after that, might be pretty close to the end. Okay, so for October, we've started with yellow. You'll notice that I'm almost always starting with the lightest color. And that's so that I can build on top. If I started with the darker, it would be a lot harder for me to build the colors up. So we've done O before. My ruler. But to be honest, you can never practice O enough because it's an oval and ovals are really tricky and hard. So remembering with O, there's two of them here. We're starting at the top, it's thin. And then as we're coming over the edge of the waterfall, we're pressing hard to get that thick downstroke. And then again, we're starting to release pressure at the bottom. So it's very thin here and it's very thin here. Now, normally I don't lift my pen in the middle of an oval, but I just want you to see how it's only thin here and here. And then I'm just coming up in an upstroke to connect. Takes a lot of practice. Okay. So I'm going to do my O. October is a bit longer, so I'm going to start further on the left. Going all the way around. Now, generally, you don't want to have a lot of weight on the bottom. I've actually made it a little bit too heavy here at the bottom. And again, that just comes with practice. And then sometimes, see this one, the transition point is exactly in the middle here and here. That's where you want to transition from thick to thin. And so we try not to have it too heavy at the bottom. Okay, so we've got 5 minutes left. So I'm just going to focus on finishing October here for you. And go around. Oh, I've made it a little bit too low. That's okay because there's actually no descenders in October. So it's not going to really affect my design in a negative way. Make my B, which is a thick downstroke, and then doing that oval that's attached. My E, that continuous line from thin to thick and then thin again. And then my thick downstroke and my overturn. And now here I've used orange. I believe I covered the entire letter with the orange from the orange point on all the way down. And then I took brown over top of it. Orange here. And again, I'm going a little bit fast here, and I would recommend you go really slow when you're practicing. So now I've got the brown. I'm going to put it at the very bottom because I'm going to use a gel pen to sort of make the finishing blend. I'm going a little bit faster than I like, but I'm going to show you the finished effect. So I really do recommend that you play with your own style of printing and just add the thick downstrokes and the thin upstrokes to your regular printing and see how it looks. I think you'll find that that's a really easy way to develop your own personal style, which lettering artists are always trying to do. Anything that makes it uniquely yours is going to be good for you as you're kind of playing with your style. At the same time, if you want to try and just recreate exactly what I've put there, please do. That's what it's there for. Both ways of looking at it is absolutely wonderful. So for this one, maybe I'll do a little bit of the shadow effect because this is where we're going to end. So I'm going to the right and above the letter. Any part of the letter form, any letter part that is available to me where I can go above it or to the right. So even inside the B and the O, I'm going to the right of that stroke. Here inside the E, I'm going to the right. And then even on the outside of the E as well. And here. Okay, and now I'm going to take my eraser and erase my lines. I didn't have a chance to do that on any of my other ones, but we might as well finish with one where I've erased my lines. Erase my little October lightly in one corner. And now I'm going to go and I'm going to make my yellow circles so that I finish the page off. If I wanted to, I could say October 2021. I could add a quote. I could make a habit tracker in the white space. I could make a place for extra notes. I really encourage you to take these lettering skills and make it yours, apply it to what works best for you when you think about laying out your calendar, and completely embellish it as much or as little as you want. I hope this has been helpful for you, and I'd love to take questions. I know we went a little fast, so I'm ready for questions when you are.
Hi, Alissa. Yes, that would be great if you can check the Q&A session here. I am also answering some questions, so I already removed some of them.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can just go ahead and check, please.
Okay, sorry. Great. I'm just scrolling through the questions. I'll let Amy answer the ones about the MUJI Supplies.
Oh,
quite a few.
The brown sticker is not from MUJI though.
Yes, no, sorry, I just had that on my desk. So far, I actually don't see any questions that are directly for me. Amy, am I missing any here? They look like they're mostly about the supplies.
No worries. So I'll have a question. Just a participant is asking, like, is there any other lettering that would be good for beginners to start? And then for today, you are teaching us the printing style for this lettering, right?
Yes, so this is printing only. I think it's really good when we have limited time, and it's good for beginners. Like I said, what you can do is you can take your own style of printing and apply the thick and the thin. So for example, let me just show you here. Let's say when you write it, like when I wrote an M, I made these huge M's, right? They're quite wide. It goes all the way down to the bottom. But what you can do, if you like to make an M like this, if this is your style of M, what you're doing is you're taking the way that you write an M and you're applying the thin upstroke and thick downstroke. Maybe you like a curvy M. Maybe you do something that's kind of more like a lowercase M, but you do it for your uppercase. You can do it that way. And if you want to start to venture into more script, then you can start to look at maybe what does your cursive style look like? It's the same principle, thin upstrokes and thick downstrokes. So yes, I've taught printing today because I think it's really accessible. And in fact, my intensive lettering workshops always start with printing because I think it's foundational. I'm just scrolling through the questions again. Someone says they enjoyed seeing it lettered in an agenda. I'm so glad to see that. Someone's asking if there's a workbook I recommend. There are a lot of resources online. I don't offer an intro to lettering booklet, but I do have my flourishing book, and it's filled with worksheets. So for example, this worksheet here, this is the basic strokes that you would need to learn to letter. So for example, downstrokes and upstrokes. Here's the overturns and the underturns that we practiced, and then some other entrance strokes that you can practice. And for this, I would recommend just put a tracing paper over top, and then you can practice it. So there are other books on the market as well. That's just mine. And then mine also gets into more flourishing, like, let me find my letters here. More scripty letters are in this book. So the nice thing about my book is that it also has an extensive toolkit, all the things you could possibly need for all kinds of lettering, including watercolors. So it is a book that can help you kind of press on after today. So I'm going to keep scrolling here. Can you put all the stripes with each month on the screen? Oh, sure. I think you mean the strips. I just read that right. Yes, I can do that. So this is the same thing you have in your workbook. See if I can get them all to fit. They might not fit on the screen. Just put as many as I can. It's pretty close to fitting. And that's in your workbook. And like I said, if you're finding that it's a little bit hard to see it printed in your workbook, you can definitely go to the PDF on your computer and try zooming into it there. How does it feel when I write? That's a great question. When I'm writing, it feels like I'm lifting and lowering my hand depending on the pressure. I'm holding the pen at that 45-degree angle, but I'm slightly lifting and pressing down constantly. It's an up and down, almost a feeling as I go. And that becomes automatic the more you practice. It's entirely new at the beginning because it's not at all how we write. But as you practice and you do drills and you just do it often, you're going to find that will become sort of an automatic movement for you. I think I've seen all the questions. Let me go all the way to the... Lots of you are saying thank you and that it's been fun and that you've enjoyed it. And I really appreciate that. Thank you for letting me know that you've enjoyed it. And I hope that you find it useful as you go forward in your journey. Please do contact me if there's any questions. I know that we tried to fill a lot of information in a short period of time. So I'm happy to connect with you online after today as well.
Yes, and also just let everyone know, we will send out a follow-up email with a survey. So feel free to let us know about your thought, any other workshop you would like to learn with us. And you will also receive a list of supplies that Alissa used today. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact back to us, to Alissa through Instagram or her email. And lastly, we would love to see your work today. So then feel free to share your pictures on social media and tag us so we get to see them. So that's everything from us. Anything else from Alissa today? Thank you so much for spending over time with us here.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I loved when I find your work online on Instagram tagged. I love to see it and I love to share it. So feel free to do that. I'd love to follow along with your creations. It really makes my day.
Yeah, and then sorry we don't have time to answer everyone's questions. So make sure you contact Alissa and then she will help you to make your practice better.
Please do.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alissa, and for everyone joining us today. We'll see you guys soon. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.